I'm going to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education, postponed for 1 week. And
With roll call?
hang on, I will. Mrs. Hines, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bain.
Here.
Mr. Beavers.
Here.
Dr. Dorr.
Here.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Mrs. James. Here. Mrs. Evaldi. Here. Mr. Rungy.
Here, next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item number 4 is the approval of the agenda. Dr. Evers, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Yes, sir.
And I'll accept the motion to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is the approval of the consent agenda, which consists of District 186 regular board meeting minutes dated 1/19/2021, Tri-County regular board meeting minutes dated 1/13/2021, Tri-County bills for February 2021, applications and reports, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is the approval of District 186 bills for February 2021. Are there any questions from the board?
Mr. Lungi, can I ask really quickly if we can let the minutes reflect that all of the board bills on the board report, page 1 of 10, those checks will all be dated the 17th as originally, because they were already put in the system when they were sent out to you on the 17th with the original packet. So they're dated the 17th, but they won't be mailed until after they're approved by the board tonight.
Gotcha.
So I just wanted to let you know, so when the auditors come through and see that we printed checks or posted checks on the 17th, that they realize that they were approved on the 23rd by the board and then mailed on the 24th. So if the minutes could reflect that, I would appreciate it.
That will be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
In a second? Mrs. Hines?
Mrs. Evaldi.
Yes.
Mr. Beavers.
Yes.
Mr. Bain.
Yes.
Dr. Dorr.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yep.
Mrs. James. Yes. Mr. Rungy.
Yes, motion carried. Item number 7 is communications. And I see, do we have some?
We do. We have 6. The first one's from Sharon Fry. It says, Principal Keener and CUSD Board of Education, thank you for formally acknowledging my recent National Board certification at the December school board meeting. I am very proud of achieving this highest level of certification available and earned for those in the teaching profession. Once achieving this momentous certification, we were informed that George Mason University has partnered with the National Board to offer credit hours for those who became National Board certified teachers as a way to give credit for the tremendous amount of work, self-reflection, and commitment to the profession of those teachers who complete the journey. As per the MEA contract, all coursework past a master's degree is to be approved by the Board of Education. I am requesting permission to enroll in this 6-credit course to be added to my salary scale. As I'm always looking for ways to better myself as a teacher, I am also enrolling in a 6-credit hour course through Greenville University. These courses focus on the SEL, social and emotional learning standards, for both students and teachers' wellness. I have begun studying this the past few years through our own district's participation in the Resilient Southern Illinois Grant. I am eager to pursue learning about the subject so I can better help educate the students we serve. I would like permission to add those courses upon completion to the salary schedule as well. Thank you for all your support for teachers and continuing their education. Sharon Fry.
The administration makes that recommendation.
And I'll entertain a motion to accept that recommendation.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next one is from Brian Tripp. Dear Dr. Evers and Board of Education, please accept this as my official notice of my retirement. I am notifying you that I plan to retire at the end of the 24-25 school year. This letter is to serve as a 4-year notice of my retirement. It has been a pleasure to work at Murphysboro School District for more than a decade. Sincerely, Brian Tripp.
The administration makes that recommendation.
I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
The next is Alyssa Sturgeon. Dear Dr. Evers and Board of Education, I'll start by saying that I am humbled and forever grateful for the opportunity of my position as the school social worker for Murphysboro Middle School for the past 2 years. I appreciate all the love, respect, and support I have received throughout my time here. It is bittersweet to announce my resignation and for this to be my last year. Thank you for all that you do. Best regards, Alyssa Sturgeon.
The administration makes that recommendation.
And I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
This is from Charlie Brazel. I, Charlie Brazel, am submitting this as my resignation from Murphysboro District 186 effective February 19, 2021. I have appreciated the skill sets, enjoyed my time here, but have found a position closer to home. Sincerely, Charlie Brazel.
The administration makes that recommendation to approve his resignation.
I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
The next one is from Linda Vara. Dear Dr. Evers and Murphysboro CUSD 186 Board of Education, please consider this letter my intent to retire at the end of 23-24 school year in accordance with Section 8.7 of the contractual bargaining agreement between the MEA and the Board of Education. As you know, I have been employed in my current position since the fall of 2001. In addition, my position to me has grown into more than just a job. It's basically who I am. I'm going to have a difficult time walking away. Sincerely, Linda Vara.
The administration makes the recommendation to approve his retirement intent.
And I'll entertain a motion to approve that recommendation.
I have a question. Is he wanting to do the 4-year notice? Because his, okay, let's say, it's different dates than,
That question did come up.
okay.
Right, he has 3 years, especially, I mean,
This is year 1, so 21,
he'll have 3.
yeah. This is year, this is.
It's prorated, I think, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, as long as they get their letter in by February 1st, this is the first year, so that would be.
So that
that's the
would be
time-
the 4.
Yeah,
Got it.
that's the appropriate timeline, yeah.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Yeah, so, and it is different than Mr. Tripp's,
Mhm.
so.
And I'll entertain a motion to approve that recommendation.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
And the last one is from Rebecca Mifflin. Hello, Georgia. I'm sorry to send this and inform you I will unfortunately be resigning my current position as a monitor for the school district due to my current situation with transportation. If possible in the future, please consider me for a different position. I'm sorry, and this decision was not taken lightly. Rebecca Mifflin.
The administration makes the recommendation to approve the resignation.
I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
That's it.
All right, item number 8 is fishbowl items, and I believe we had one.
We do. This is from the desk of Mrs. Stephanie Finke. Carrie Kilquist won a grant from the Jackson County Farm Bureau and was awarded with a new incubator and supplies to hatch chicks in the classroom. This is something the students look forward to doing every year in first grade as they learn about life cycles. Stay tuned for baby chickens at General Johnny Lou.
That's fine.
I've got one.
That's awesome.
Oh, there is 2, I'm sorry.
This is from Mr. Keener from the middle school. Murphysboro Middle School is excited to announce that we have been awarded an Amazon Future Engineers Grant for the 2021-22 school year. Through this program, Amazon is providing 100% financial assistance to help eligible middle schools implement a 3-year computer science sequence and corresponding professional development program in partnership with Project STEM. For the 21-22 school year, students in the 6th grade will continue with keyboarding skills as they have in the past. 7th grade students will participate in Computer Science Explorations 1. The current 7th and 8th grade curriculums will be combined into one for the 8th grade students. This is an outstanding opportunity for our students, and we are honored to have been selected. Jeff Keener.
All right, is that it? All right, thank you. Item 9 is Freedom of Information Act request. I don't see any on here, so I'm assuming we did not get any. Next item is recognition of the audience. The Board of Education welcomes the audience to make public or employee comments. The board has set aside time in the agenda specifically for this purpose. Pursuant to Board Policy 2.230, each speaker shall be limited to a 5-minute presentation. Please be aware that while this is the time for the public to express its opinions and/or concerns, the board may or may not comment regarding public presentations. If a matter of public comment warrants discussion or action of the Board of Education, such discussion or action will be added to the agenda of a future meeting. Are there any public concerns, or did we receive any?
We did not.
Are there any employee concerns? Yes, sir.
Most of you know me at this point, Darrell Young. I just wanted to extend a word of gratitude to the district administration and our building administrators. As I'm sure you're aware, over the course of the last month, all of the faculty and staff have had the opportunity to receive the coronavirus vaccine. The district office out here, the unit office, they did all of that scheduling for us. They bent over backwards to make that happen, and our building administrators showed a lot of grace and gave us the time. And I just wanted to be sure to express thanks back to the district and to the administration for that. So, thank you.
We want to thank the administration then for doing that too. That was great, and for all the ones that took the opportunity to get the shots.
And I will give a shout out to Mr. Ellemeyer and Miss Sunny, helped divide up the database so that we could make sure that I think we had about, in all, when it was all said and done, about 171 of our employees who took the vaccine. So over 60% of our employees took it. So we were feverish when those vaccinations first came out to make sure that we could get them scheduled all at one time. And then the grace that was extended by the health department in making sure that, of course, when the snowpocalypse happened last week, you got nervous about whether or not the vaccines would happen. But by Monday, Carrie Garrell had already said, and Jessica Grammer said, don't worry. I know you're already worried about Thursday, and it was just Monday when the snow was still coming down. She said, we're already rescheduling the Thursday dates to Saturday. Please let your employees know to just plan for their exact same time just on Saturday. And so just that information getting out quickly to our employees so that they knew that they didn't have to worry about whether or not they could be plowed out by the neighbor farmer or making things happen by Saturday before we started to really thaw out. It was just really reassuring for everyone. So hand in hand with the Jackson County Health Department all year, we've been able to make informed decisions, and they were just very gracious to make sure that everyone who needed the Thursday had an opportunity. And I think the Mondays were scheduled for Friday, and so they made last week's schedule. And just for information, I guess it would probably go on a COVID update. If anyone who is 16 and up has any type of medical condition that could possibly use it, they are allowed to start scheduling for anyone 16 and up if they have a pre-existing medical condition. So check on the Jackson County Health Department site. They've opened it up a lot more vaccines, and so with the National Guard, they're really making this just a seamless process, and the Health Department and SIU, and I think the Civic Center is now an alternative location. So it's just been Murphysboro proud, but just community. I mean, Jackson County as a health department, I would put them side by side with the quality of a DuPage County, which is supposed to be, kind of the flagship health department in the state, and they're right there with them.
Very good.
Do we have
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Do we have an increase in need for subs then today, or?
We didn't. Most,
No?
I think that we're only about they were able to cover their substitute needs based on, even though it was a Saturday administration.
Yesterday being remote.
Yesterday-
was helpful.
Yesterday being remote, we had, I want to say, from the elementary buildings, there were a handful, up to the middle school, high school, there were about 13 or 14 at those two respective buildings who worked from home yesterday or,
Yeah.
kind of recovered from home yesterday. But today,
Pretty
everyone,
good?
yeah, we
Oh,
were
good.
well covered and able to resume. And we wanted to resume, obviously, that was our goal after having a 2-week pause to the in-person side of things, so.
I know that, when I was at the center, they said about to expect about half your staff to be out the next day. So I was thinking when you said 170, that'd be about 85 people out, so no.
Our Sunday, when we talked to people on Sunday, there were a ton of people who had
Okay.
a horrible Sunday.
Okay.
And then that residual, you know, who were still struggling 48 hours on Monday, and then now we're at 72, and we were ready to, I know when I was at Carruthers today, there was one employee who was out, and that was it, so. And it sounds, I had a question that arose, and I think the high school had one that was still, you know, feeling ill from the vaccine, so really overall, when you look at big picture, that's astounding when you're looking at over 170 administered, so.
Amazing.
So good, and we also looked at, just encouraging any of the teachers who were kind of resistant, or employees who were resistant because they just didn't know. We put out that if they are interested in getting the first vaccine and the second vaccine, that we would show them the same amount of grace that we did the individuals who went and kind of forged the path, because we want as many people who elect. So if they, as long as they inform their administrator and CC me on, that they're getting their vaccine 1 and 2, then we'll make sure that we give them, it's always perfect if you can get a Thursday or Friday date so that you have a full weekend to truly recover, and that Monday for remote. But hopefully we'll get a few more, but who knows? I mean, we're very, very pleased with 60. If you can get to 70 or 75 or 80% who have elected for it of our overall employees, but
170 is still pretty good.
it is pretty good. I mean, I think that when I was talking to respective other superintendents, they had some on the low end were more like a 30 to 40% participation to our end where we're over 60. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving into old business, one item, district financial and COVID update. You've kind of given a COVID update.
Well, and only
Unless you have anything else with that one?
there's the COVID numbers, and then just wanted to let the board know that we had our first positive on a sports team. And so Jackson County Health Department is working with the school nurse to source trace, and it will, when you have it on a sports team, since they can't socially distance in contact sports, you'll see that will go up. At next week's numbers on
For
on our,
quarantining?
it won't be on this week, so it'll be on next week, they'll work on next week when you get those numbers from me. When you see a big peak on quarantine numbers, it's because of one positive on a team, so that's why. And then, I mean, it's just the charts that you guys get every Thursday, and then the addition, and about the information that we had over 170 employees take it, the second dose on Saturday, so. Nothing too noteworthy, except for that was, and we knew it was going to happen when you start doing sports without the ability to social distance like you could with cross country and golf. When you get into those medium to high risk sports and participation, they source trace the whole team. So,
Any financial update?
do you have anything to do?
Not really. We, next week, Steve and I think Dr. Evers have signed up for a webinar to look at the CARES 2 money that we're gonna be getting, looking at that webinar so we can see exactly what we can and can't write for. We've been looking at gathering kind of a wish list of what we need that we might be able to pay for with CARES money without supplanting, if they're not, I know that's gonna be an issue, that not wanting us to use that money for things that we are currently spending money on. So we're want to look at what we can and can't do before we write that grant, because I don't think it's open yet, but I think it will be very soon. That and we're looking at a little over $3 million on that, in that pot of money. There was something else I was going to say, and it just got away from me.
So you're saying if you bought Chromebooks last time, you can't spend money on
No,
those?
I'm not saying
Okay.
you could. I'm saying for things like because
Like if we had already planned for upgrade to our HVAC, we couldn't write for the grant. I mean, whenever we've already planned to update our HVAC
not
system.
necessarily. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be that because we haven't spent that money, but for things because we've, our initial idea was because we've lost, we have a freeze this year in our state funding, our evidence-based funding, and the increase in that money that we had initially planned for should have covered salaries and, salary increases and additional staff positions that we hired for this school year. Ideally with a freeze, it would be great if we could use some of that money to offset those expenses, but my guess is we probably won't. We probably won't be able to do that. But as far as Chromebooks, I mean, I'm assuming, yes, we'll probably want to look at buying additional devices. They don't last forever, and they weren't all brand new. We weren't able to buy brand new ones, so some of those were, I don't know how old they were, but those will be expenses, you know, an additional software for the remote learning, because a lot of that software was just a 1 year.
Promethean boards, there's, you know, some Promethean boards and those technologies that are definitely in need of updating. And so I know Mr. Carrington and the building administrators are trying to get the utilization needs so that we have a big picture of course, you know, if we have the money, we want to replace all of them, but if they're not all being utilized, if it's not, if a teacher's just using an Elmo projector, then do you put the newest, best Promethean board in a classroom? And so looking at that full continuum of their needs. And so, those are some of the things that we'll be looking at, and we can also potentially look at if we.
Can you look at lower class sizes at that line too, so that there's?
There's not been any on the first round. You couldn't use for classroom reduction or like the ed fund column, like for certified staff or paras to keep those class sizes. So we're hoping that maybe that there will be some wiggle room or ability to do salaries, or at least maintain the salaries, because part of the advantage of having these class sizes as small as we have had is that we were able to offer 4-day in-person and socially distanced because our class sizes were small. So sustaining those through the pandemic, and it looks like, you know, almost all the media in the last few weeks says that we're going to be having the need for masking at least through January. So, you know, to make many adjustments to class sizes, you know, of course I'd like to get closer to balance, and I think that there will be opportunities that we'll capture. We spent less travel this year with these mini athletic season, like the abbreviated, you know, many 5-week schedules, 6-week schedules that we're gonna have with football. We didn't put as much, there wasn't as much cost for like athletics and athletic transportation, and so we'll recover in some areas so that we probably will have to stay fairly level at our staffing levels to make sure that we can venture into a 4 or 5 day approach to in-person learning next year safely.
But we're gonna have some of the same expenses that we've had this year, you know, the PPE and all the, you know, the disinfection supplies, which.
We won't have the plexiglass, all those plexiglass barriers and partitions will remain intact, but we will, like you said, depending on how the sanitizer, but the spraying that we use for like all of the classrooms and the boardrooms and the spaces and those will continue through the pandemic and probably beyond. I mean, some of those things are just, you look at how much healthier we've been with regards to cold and flu this year because of masking and these disinfecting strategies. So a lot of those will be in place. Some of them won't be an annual cost because like all the plexiglass that we put out to make office areas and cafeteria areas are intact and will be able to stay. So.
What about increased summer instruction?
And that's something that's the next item. So you want to officially get to it, and then we'll.
Let's move into new business.
Yeah.
First item is summer school, which is informational.
So we're looking at a summer, so if you saw me on my phone, that was so I could look at the date. We're looking at the first Tuesday in June, starting an 8-week summer school. There will be a section at each grade level, kindergarten through 12. And so that's one of the postings that we'll have tonight is to post for summer school teachers and the support staff to help make sure that that's very successful. Obviously, we have to look at the bigger picture beyond just retentions at middle school and high school and kids who are lacking the credits to graduate. There is definitely learning loss. And so making sure that even though kindergarten is not necessarily considered compensatory, that we're going to offer a section of each kindergarten through 12. So we'll be posting for those vacancies and making sure that we do our part to narrow the learning loss gap that all kids have seen.
And how will students be identified for that? Will teachers identify, or can parents request that?
And I would say that you're looking at the students who are at risk of retention will be the first, and then the students who have that are in the like lowest quadrant or quartile for based on their RIT score and their performance, and then those families or those students that would be identified as at risk. And so if I know that they're looking at a multi-tier approach, but they like to have as many kids as possible be touched, not just the children who are potentially not going to be promoted to the next year. So giving all the kids who really could benefit.
So parents won't make a request, the teachers will identify.
The teachers will identify.
And notify parents if their student is.
Yes, absolutely.
Got it.
And they're gonna make it on database decisions, but that, yeah, the retention will not be the only group that will be identified, but that will be the first level, and then based on performance and teacher recommendations, so.
Any other questions from the board? Item number 2, under new business, is the renewal of the transportation contract with West Bus Service. This is an action item. Mrs. Bush?
Yes, administration has been working with West Bus Service to try to get a 1-year contract extension for probably a little over a month and a half, and, you know, back and forth, and have reduced the requested increase down to 2.5% on our special ed and our regular ed transportation routes, and the cost of that increase for the 2.5%, $32,321.25. And the conversation that we've had, of course, like everyone else, the minimum wage increases that we've had January 1st, July 1st, and then again January 1st coming up again. That's also impacted transportation services, as they're looking at retaining bus drivers. You know, why should I stay here when I can go somewhere else and get another job? So increases in salaries and bonuses to retain drivers is where they plan to use additional money. So I was actually kind of pleased with 2.5% to extend 1 more year. And then based on the age of the buses at that point, because then we'll be looking at our buses being 7 years old, many of those buses at the end of the contract year, if the board approves this proposal, looking at going out for bid for next year. So actually, Dr. Evers and I talked about the possibility of bringing that to a September board meeting, bringing bids back as early as November next year, so that we could have plenty of time to get those contracts done, plenty of time to bring that forward for the I guess that would be FY 23.
Yeah, so looking at the full process to go out
Yeah.
for a full bid.
To include our own, running our own buses.
Well, what we'll do is, and that's 2 layers to it. We will look at going out for requests for proposals, and then weighing out, once we get the full continuum of bids, and there should be, when I was at my prior district, we did 3 different contracts, and it typically brings out several competitive entities to bid the contract, and so then we'll look at, by going out in September, remember September is the fourth Tuesday of the month, if we keep our same date. 4th Tuesday of the month, it's a little later because the budget has to be on file. Then we will have that ability to give an RFP cycle, so that at the November board meeting, we'll be able to really spend time with what the proposals look like, and determine whether or not it's advantageous for us to continue with an outside contracted service. And if that isn't the route that the board would want to take, then it would still give us time to look
Fleet
at
it and hire.
fleet and hire, yeah, I mean, put all those layers of.
Or at least be able to put the numbers together to see if it's,
Correct.
So what's this, having our own buses? I feel like people
Yeah.
know things
Yeah,
about
I
having our
heard
own
that.
buses, and I have not.
well, like
heard of
Trico
this.
does it. So there's, in the
Right.
But I
district
feel
I'm
like there's
from,
already
does
been
it.
a discussion where people are aware of this.
I think he brought it up
Yeah,
the
this is,
last
this
time
is
we
it,
put it
the
on.
past
for
3
bid.
years this has come up. I brought it up saying I'd like to know what the difference would be between running Robinson West or doing our own.
Isn't it typically really small districts that can?
I think it's a large
do that?
assumption.
It's hard, if you haven't traditionally done it, it becomes a whole employment umbrella, because you have to
Yeah.
employ, it would be a multi-layer, and that's why if we would even consider it, like if we're going out for a full proposal to see what RFPs we have, or considering potentially doing similar to what Trico does, Trico, I don't know what their level, we have about 26 regular routes, plus we'd have to have additional probably 4 or 5 buses just in case there were service needs. How do you service it? I mean, there is a whole continuum, so you have your transportation director, the transportation, secretary, which, helps with like the route management and the billing for that side of that, and then you go on to like the mechanics and those type of people, and then the biggest piece is the bus drivers.
I don't
Didn't we
even-
used to do that? Wasn't
What's that?
Butch Stigman ran it, didn't he?
When the last time we had our own buses, I was in high school, so
Yeah.
I think we sold the buses to West in about 84, 85, so it's been a long time since we've actually
A
done
long
it.
time. It's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
It would be.
For me, I just want to be able to, it's like we sit here and we say 32,000 increase. So those things where like every year, if you can put a number to, if we did our own, are we closing that gap? Does that gap stay parallel because the cost is the cost, West, us, anybody else? That's kind of where I'm coming from, is I want to make sure that, you know, in the past, we've kind of been hesitant on putting it out to bid because we don't know. But at the same time, we never get all the information either to know that we're making the best decision,
Yeah.
which I get it, it's risky, but you
But
don't
I
know
do
until you
believe
know.
that when we go out, we will get at least 4 bus companies to bid.
Okay.
I mean, even in a much smaller district, I typically got 3 to 5 bids from, and that, it keeps it competitive in the process so we can weigh it out. Because, you know, if you're going to make that big of a leap with almost 30 regular routes, then you wanna make sure that there's a significant, you know,
Yep.
cost.
So it's my understanding we couldn't handle, being in charge of latchkey after-school care and gave that up to the park district because that was too much to handle.
That's before my time, sorry,
So
so.
I would be surprised if we could take over buses.
It's huge, yeah, it is, agreed. But, I mean, that's why if we're going to look at any and all options, we'd have to approach it very conservatively, make it a motion to go out for bids for proposals in September, give enough time for all interested, like, entities to sharpen their pencil, as you like to say, and give us their best bids, their best proposals, and then,
So we're just kind of too late this year to do anything, is that what you're,
well,
that's why you want to extend?
I think when you're looking at, when we got down to a 2.5% increase, I think that's a very sound considering what you're looking at with
Because
the,
it was 11 last year.
and getting it, when it narrowed, and when she said she went back and forth,
Yeah.
it went down considerably, like we got down to the smallest number that they could comfortably live with, and so I'm okay with 2.5. I really am for 1 year, and then looking at, had we gotten into that 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5 requests, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd say, all right, let's go out for bid, but then if you go out for bid this late, like in February, which is not necessarily late, you would, it's harder for them to fleet. It's a little later.
Yeah.
It's harder for them to fleet with new
It's
buses,
late.
and you're bidding differently, like, you have to expect next time when they bid, your contract from, what is it, 16, 17, when you did the original 7 years ago?
15, 16. was the
15,
first.
16, I mean, those are buses that now will have,
16,
at the
17,
end,
18, that's what you put in the email.
FY 16?
You
Yeah.
put 16, 17, 18.
The 16, yeah, FY 16.
so those are 7-year
When I said 15, 16,
older
yeah.
buses. When you look at a new contract, those are gonna be new buses that they're looking at, so those numbers will be reflective of, you know, a fleet that's newer, so.
The last time there was an issue with them having the cameras recording and all that, has that been?
That has not been an issue this year, and I know that we've had, you know, our building administrators have had to look and have had no issues. Now,
With getting what they need.
yeah, probably in reality, there are a lot less disciplinary issues this year because
There's less
because
people
there's
on the
less
bus.
kids, social
Right.
distancing, so there probably hasn't
There
been
were
as
more
many
parent,
issues.
there's been a significant number in like uptick at the, especially at the K to 5 level in the parent drop off. So there's fewer incidents, but when they've requested and they've been able to get the film footage, so that has not, and I knew that was last May when I
Right.
was, you
That
know,
was
just
an issue.
participating in the discussions.
Did I hear that the increase last year was 11? Did somebody say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It
what
was.
I asked for the increases and
And
she
2.5
told me
this
they
year?
were 6,
Yeah,
4,
2.5.
and 11.
That's pretty good.
And if everyone's okay with it, Ms. Hines will put it on the calendar to put that up for, as a discussion item in September next year, so that we get one of their irons hot next fall. But I think this is a very fair proposal for a 1-year extension.
Quick question, so like on the transportation, money we get, they would pay for fuel, obviously we pay for our own fuel.
We pay for our fuel.
Money was saved last year, so that would carry forward to this year that we're using now. But with fuel futures looking like they're gonna go up, do we get more funding prorated based off of the like current fuel price, or how does that work out? Cause if you go from, you know, if fuel were to go up 40% or something.
There's always a fuel escalator, and so when we had fuel in our contract, then it's not like they ate the fuel, there was an escalator, so if it went up, it went up for us too, so we didn't save any money by having it in the contract. We took it out of the contract, cause we saved some, federal taxes.
Okay.
And so that's the only difference there, but yeah, there's really no way that any bus company is willing to.
Realized I was just
the
saying between
contract.
state funding to
And
us.
he's asking, will we get more money if all of a sudden gas prices double?
No, I don't know.
So we're not gonna get anything from that. It is what it is.
It is what it is. We have basically, the idea of or state transportation is that we get 80% reimbursement on, I'm trying to think, it's a different level for special ed. State funding, and I say that's the idea because it doesn't necessarily happen exactly that way with proration. If there's not enough money, we don't get all the state funding for that. And then the balance is funded with property taxes.
And typically late payments from the state on transportation, right?
Of course, yeah.
But you said you got all the money left.
Yeah, we did. It happens a lot of times where, you get the quarter that you're supposed to get the fourth quarter, you don't get it till the next year. But since I've been here, we haven't been, they haven't shorted us any, or it's just been delayed.
Is that supposed to say the same? You said that there's gonna be,
That's
that's gonna.
I can't say for sure. I mean, there's a conversation about funding cuts, but I feel like that may not come in the categoricals, which at this point is just, transportation, pre-K. Those funding cuts, in my mind, will come straight out of the evidence-based funding, just the big chunk, when those come down.
So if we do look at going out for quotes or proposals next year, it would be more than just price driven, right? Could we include factors that would give bidders an opportunity to say they have experience, it's more of a request for proposal than it is just shopping for price, because we're putting our kids on these buses.
Indeed.
I mean, probably one of the bigger risks, even though we're subcontracting, we're putting them on someone else's buses, someone else's employee. I mean, it's a huge exposure for this community. I want to make sure that it's not only price sensitive, but it's also,
Yes.
do they have quality employees? Have they produced in other districts? If it's the Kevin and Kara bus service that just formed last fall, I mean, you got some real serious
Similar
concerns.
to the vetting out, right, yes.
You don't want me driving a bus.
Similar to when we looked at like the CDB qualifications, we can ask for a minimum of X number of years in the transportation.
I think that's in there. In the last contract we did, I believe we have a set amount of this many years' experience, along with just the usual stuff, your safety records, your financials.
Yes.
That's all in the last bid process that we did, and we can certainly look at that.
And you
see
can
if there are
ask for
things that
letters
we
of
need to add.
recommendation from
And
What
school
districts, what districts are you serving? What experience have you had? And then when they give us that information, then we can vet those districts. Do you have any issues with this district? Because it boils down to, is this aside from price, is this a responsible bidder? Is this a responsive bidder? Have they met all of the other criteria? And there are new, and this is something I'm gonna have to sharpen up on a little bit, the bidding process, because there've been some changes on things that a district can do to, if they receive the bids, to not make it all about the money, what you
Right.
just said, to make a stronger case for, okay, this piece here, we're not comfortable with this. Look at the safety records for this company. They had 25 bus accidents last year.
Yeah, I would encourage us to look at scoring that, though, in the evaluation somehow. Because if someone just meets the minimum and someone else has a stellar program somewhere else, in my opinion, that may be worth a little more money.
Sure.
And then we're not forced into just going with the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
And I would also endeavor for similar to a lot of the committees that you have, having to, at least to like having, well, you can't have a majority of quorum, so you'd have to have maybe 2 board members participate on that committee when the bids come in, and then when they're opened, you go through that full vetting process to make sure that they really are a safe, and we can work with Mr. Jones on anything that we can put into to really layer the process on being safety driven. I mean, like safety and performance driven, because there's almost everyone you can find people who say, oh, they're the best thing since sliced bread, right? And then other people who will say, oh gosh, I wouldn't work with that company again if I asked. And so, when we looked at like the building side of it, we could look at the capital development board pre-qualification to kind of vet that out. But we need to look at what layers we have in place to look beyond the
Is there a-
lowest bidder.
Is there a similar type organization for bus companies?
Not that I'm aware of, but it's been it was 3 years ago when I bid my last bus contract. But that's something that I will absolutely research into, because that's something that I truly believe. I rode on a lot of buses for a lot of years, and I can tell you, I know quality of buses. Everything from, like, even the heat when you're on extracurriculars means something when it's as cold as it can be in southern Illinois, or, I mean, yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
Do we have a copy of the contract or not yet?
No, I mean, the only thing with, it's just an offer, and actually, they haven't given me the revised offer in writing yet, that basically just says, we'll say 2.5% increase on special ed and regular ed bus routes, and everything else stays the same as what we currently have.
So it'd be basically an amendment to
It's just an
the
extension of the
existing
current
contract.
contract, yeah.
So do we vote on that then, if we don't have it yet?
Just the terms.
The
of it.
terms, the 2.5% on regular and special transportation.
But didn't you say you don't have it back from them yet?
No, I don't, I have it through email. They
What are you
agreed.
getting, just the price increase, you have the contract, right?
Right,
Because it
right.
hasn't changed.
Yeah, that's what and I've just asked them to send, because it's a proposal that they sent, and I talked them down through the last week and a half from, several different conversations through, well, I don't know about that, I don't think that's something I'm comfortable with, so, I asked today, but I know there have been some health issues with personnel, so, it's taken a little while to get that, but we will have that in writing and, be able to confirm that.
So what we'd be acting on tonight is a 2.5% increase with all other items, all other contractual items intact,
Yeah.
on regular and special ed transportation.
But,
So the only thing we took out last time was the fine for the cameras, right?
Right.
That's the only thing that changed.
right.
The fine, and then it was the 11% was what we voted on last year in May.
Right. I just wanted to add one thing really quick that came to my mind, Shannon, when we were talking about having our own buses, is that some of the districts around us that have their own buses, there's such a shortage in drivers that their administrators are driving buses.
I was thinking about principals.
They are,
One
I mean,
of-
they
one
have their
of-
bus driver's license and they're jumping on buses and it's going through my mind is it's nice to, if you have the time to be able to ride a bus, just to check on discipline occasionally, but for that to be your required route that you're driving, when there are so many things that are going on, that just, when I've heard that,
The superintendent of Century, he drives a bus, and he oftentimes has to pick up a driver, and I mean, that's not something you would want me to do, that would be part of the
So you're saying,
disqualification.
you're saying you need Shannon to get a CDL?
I'm asking Shannon if that would be a possibility.
I would say on a dry pavement day, I can do a 15-passenger activity bus, and that would be the limit.
All right, no more substitute drivers in here. I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation for the extension of the West Bus Service contract.
I'll make the motion.
In a second,
Second,
Mrs. Hines.
Mr. Bain?
Yes.
Mr. Beavers?
yes.
Dr. Dorr?
No.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. James?
Yes.
Mrs. Evaldi?
Yes.
Mr. Rungy?
Yes, motion carries. We have a need to go into closed session.
I make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to section 2 of the Open Meetings Act 5, Illinois compiled statutes 120/2C, to review discussion of minutes lawfully closed and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee to determine its validity.
In a second,
Second,
Mrs. Hines.
Mr. Beavers?
Yes.
Mrs. Evaldi?
yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. James?
Yes.
Mr. Bain?
Yes.
Dr. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Rungy?
Yes, motion carries.